All right, we good? All right. Hello and welcome to Mind Games. This is exploring mental health through games. So, this is me. Surprisingly normal photo of me, actually. It's got my contact info and so forth. As it notes, I'm a DevOps engineer at Unity Technologies. I'm a security enthusiast. I'm an enormous fan of games. And if you want to talk to me, you can probably notice a bit of a theme here with my name is Frozen Fox. You can find me on all sorts of services, and I'm sure Google is probably something on me. Anyway, that's enough about me, though. Let's talk about everyone's favorite subject. Mental disorders. So, mental health is a real serious issue today. It affects the lives of millions of people just in this country alone, not even thinking about the rest of the world. And thing is about all those millions of people that are affected, we aren't really any better in InfoSec. We deal with this the same way that everyone else does. And at the end of the day, behind every hack, every tool, and every exploit is a person. And people make up InfoSec. And we need to start thinking about how to better understand and our fellow people whenever they're struggling. So, with that, let's take a quick look at how things are now. So first up is depression. For this and the others, I've got an appendix at the end of this that I'll have up, and I strongly encourage anybody who's interested in this stuff to go ahead and take a look at. But first, let's look at the numbers. An estimated 16.2 million adults in the U.S. have had at least one major depressive episode. Just let that sink in for a minute. That's 16 million people have had this at least once. That's an enormous amount of people, right? I mean, the prevalence of adults with a major depressive episode was highest amongst individuals aged 18 to 25. That's 10.9% of those 16 million people. And again, that's just here. That's not even worldwide. In 2016, an estimated 10.3 million U.S. adults aged 18 or older had at least one major depressive episode with severe impairment. And that means they were not able to function normally. That's how depressed they were. This number represented 4.3% of all U.S. adults. I mean, that's over 10 million people. Chances are pretty good that some of you know or even are someone who's had one of these. So, what about ADHD? I personally suffer from ADHD, and it affects everything I do every single day, including this talk, actually. I don't have any super snazzy graphics for it, unfortunately, but these are a few interesting data points I found that you might, also find interesting. 4.4% of the adult population in this country has ADHD, but less than 20% of those people actually seek any help for it. I mean, that 4.4%, okay, to put this in context, the population of the country is 323.1 million people, give or take a couple people. That's about 14,216,400 people. That's an enormous amount of people with ADHD. And think about how only a fifth of those actually seek any help because they're too embarrassed or they're too ashamed or they're told that it's not really a problem, but it affects everything they do. That's a culture problem. We have, in taking a look here, adults with ADHD are nearly 50% more likely to be in a serious car crash. Having ADHD makes you 3 times more likely to be dead by the age of 45. ADHD prescriptions spiked 85% between 2008 and 2012. That's just in a 4-year period for women aged 26 to 34. Anxiety disorders occur in about 50% of adults with ADHD, which includes me, actually. And only 1% of that ADHD research is focused on the disorder in women. But you know what's really terrible about this? That right there. I know plenty of women with ADHD. It is no easier on them. There is no reason this should exist. Like, there's no reason, 1% of reason, that doesn't make any sense. That just, at all. Moving right on, let's take a look at PTSD. So I pulled this graphic from ptsdunited.org, and honestly, that's a lot of people with PTSD. Apparently, according to this graph, my entire state has PTSD, which also doesn't entirely surprise me. Anyway, 70% of the adults in the U.S., 70%, almost Just massive, right? These people have experienced some type of traumatic event at least once in their lives. This equates to approximately 223.4 million people. That's huge. As noted, 8% of Americans will have PTSD at any given time. It's not just one or two people. It's not that one guy in your neighborhood or something. It's enormous. It's a huge amount of people. 24 million people. Up to 20% of these people will go on to develop PTSD. As of today, that equates to approximately 44 million people who are struggling with PTSD, and an estimated 1 out of every 9 women, period, will develop PTSD, making them about twice as likely as men. Which also is just mind-boggling. That's just... It's a huge amount of people with a serious problem. So, things are bad. That doesn't really help us explore it, though. So, this is going to be my approach during this presentation, and I'm going to need a couple of disclaimers first. So, our first is that basically we're going to break this into 3 sections. In each section, we're going to talk about a disorder and a game that helps us explore this in a more interactive fashion. This is a huge one. I am not a licensed psychotherapist. Please take anything I say with a grain of salt. My word is not gold. If you have concerns, if you have a problem, if you know somebody with a problem, or if you're just interested and want to help, please actually seek a professional for these things that is licensed to be able to give advice on these things. We're just going to be talking about exploring it. And naturally, because we're talking about games here, there's spoilers. Sorry. Okay. What we're going to be talking about has a lot to do with interpretation of story, and in many cases, a common question is about what the author meant for it to be about. We call this authorial intent, and while it's a big subject on its own, these are the most popular schools of thought when it comes to criticism. So, in our anti-authorial intent camp, we have new criticism, psychoanalytic criticism, Cambridge School contextualism, and post-structuralism. In the pro-authorial intent, we have Marxist and weak intentionalism. And basically, under the catch-all is reader response, how it made you feel. The pro-authorial intent ones here, though, will say something along the lines of, it's interesting and worthy of investigation, but doesn't actually help us understand it any better. And they all boil down to the fact that we can only analyze the finished product, not the author's brain. So that's what our examination focuses on. This is kind of like, say, when you find a terrible service or a terrible piece of code, there's no way you can actually understand what was going through that person's mind. You can only analyze what we actually have. So that's what we're going to pay attention to. Okay. So, great. First up, let's have a look at depression through the well-known game Depression Quest. Before we go any further, it is important for everybody to be on the same page, and I know that not everybody plays video games. So, to make sure that everyone's on the same page and everyone's up to speed, I have a demo of the gameplay. Kinda. You see, there's not actually any good trailers or anything for Depression Quest because it's not really a traditional sort of game. So, instead I've taken some screenshots which should help us illustrate what sort of game it is. Let's have a look. So this is our first screenshot and the most positive. This is from later in the game, and you can see how the game tells you your state of mind is more positive, constructive steps have been taken to manage your depression, and the character's outlook is positive. I don't have any options to choose from in this one, but overall it looks like a pretty good day for your character. In this screenshot, we can see what starts to happen if your depression management is allowed to slip. More of the options that are positive become crossed out, and your available actions are dwindling. You can also see down there at the bottom how the text below lets you know your current state. And finally, we can see here what starts happening if your depression goes unmanaged for too long. Almost all of your options are unavailable in the same way that a person with depression feels unable to move on or function normally. So now that everyone's familiar, what is Depression Quest? So, like I said, it is a game, but not in the traditional sense. It's more of an interactive fiction. It's kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure. It gives you a block of text, you get some options, it gives you some descriptive text about your depression level and things you've been doing, and then you make choices. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It's also completely free, so there's no reason not to check it out, which I highly recommend. Honestly, even just like 30 minutes with this, it will tell you everything you need to know. It's really good. Okay, so that's the game. But what is depression? Let's have a look at what the DSM-5 defines depression as. So you have a depressed mood or a loss of interest or pleasure in daily activities consistently for at least a 2-week period, not within like a Monday blues thing, but a prolonged period of time. You have a subjective report or observations made by others, the significant weight loss or gain, insomnia, restlessness, fatigue and tiredness, just being totally out of energy, feelings of worthlessness and guilt, a diminished ability to concentrate or think, and recurrent thoughts of death or suicide. So, we know what depression is. We know what this game is. In this context, what is it actually about? What is it actually about? Not the gameplay itself. In this case, this game is about experiencing depression. You are a depressed person trying to deal with everyday life, going through, going to work, making friends, doing the things that everyone does, but in this case, you have depression. It's daily, sometimes hourly battles to maintain mood, and you have to make the most of the available options whilst knowing that others are available. You see, most games give you a box. We call it a gameplay box. And within that box, there are all the things you can do. So, like, say, if it's something like Grand Theft Auto, your gameplay box includes buying things, driving cars, shooting people, whatever it happens to be. And that giant gameplay box, all the gameplay is focusing around within that. And most of the fun comes from having a giant box of things that you can do. The genius in this game is that it excellently shows just what depression is simply by showing you the size of the box. And then by taking away your options, if you're not well enough to choose them, it shows you what they could be and it shrinks your box. And that's it. You know the box is bigger. You know there's more options. You can see them, but you can't choose them. You can't just do it. So, how does it really do this, right? Let's have a look. In all of these, and like in all stories, there's always symbolism. So, the first symbol that we have in this are the choices. All the choices, as I noted, are known to the player. Only a limited set of options are able to be chosen, and depression sufferers are aware of those other options, but they're unable to execute upon them. They're not able to just shake it off. They know that, say, they need to go to their therapist. They know they need to be cool at a party or whatever it is they have to do, but due to their condition, they're not able to. They can't. So anyway, what else can we do here? Well, we can take a look at the text color. We have red for crossed out options. As a study found in Emotion back in 2011, it showed that red text actually causes a more visceral reaction, hence why all the crossed out options are red, because it should piss you off. It should make you angry a little bit. Similarly, the options that are available are in blue. It has a calming effect, and it can also create feelings of sadness. Even choosing something, knowing it's the only available one, can still kind of bring you down a little bit. So this about wraps up Depression Quest. It's pretty straightforward and simple to understand how to explore it. So since it didn't really take a whole lot of symbolism or explanation for us to examine what depression is like, let's tackle one that's a little harder with ADHD and the game Devil Daggers. So first up, what is Devil Daggers? So, I know this won't show up in the recording, unfortunately. There we go. As before, it's really important that everyone's familiar with the game, so I'm going to go ahead and play a quick demo for you. It's not immediately obvious, but a single touch by any one of these creatures is enough to instantly end the game. Notice the sound. As you can see, there's a lot of target priority going on, but ultimately it's the same sort of gameplay that I and many shooter fans have played for decades. The controls and tactics are simple. The design is much deeper. Circle strafe, hold down the left mouse key, target priority. What you're seeing here is my very best run on Devil Daggers. This is my absolute best, no matter what. And that's not saying that I'm amazing, as I'm not. What you're seeing is what's inside my head. I don't mean just during this game, but I mean all the time. But most especially whenever I meditate. Whenever I try to clear my mind, let nothing in it. Things come out of the dark. Those racing thoughts, those rushing memories, all of those things. And if you watch carefully here, you can actually see as we come in towards the end, you can actually see me lose my focus. You can see it just chip away. This is right about the very last moment when I still actually have control. And right here, you can even see where I try to pick a target. Ones that I previously paid attention to, I can't. You can even hear, as there's more sounds to key in on. I look like I'm going to do a little better, maybe even last for a long time. But nope, there's not. There are people significantly better than me. Way better. They can play for 15, 20. Some of them can't even play for 30 minutes or more. And just like that, it's all gone. It's all over. So now that you're familiar with what the gameplay looks like, what is Devil Daggers anyway? It's a single-player game. It's available on multiple platforms. It's really cheap. It's like $10. It's the style of a 90s shooter. It has one movement style, one level, one weapon, one game mode, one life, and infinite enemies. Not everyone is actually familiar with the actual definition of ADHD beyond pop culture references, so let's actually have a look here and see what the DSM-5 actually says ADHD is. It's a persistent pattern of inattention or hyperactivity impulsivity that interferes with functioning or development. They fail to give close attention details, difficulty sustaining attention in tasks or play activities, forgetfulness, does not follow through on instructions, difficulty organizing tasks and activities, talks excessively, interrupts or intrudes on others, and fidgets. So some of these, especially if you know me, are going to sound awfully familiar. I, for instance, talk excessively and fidget, as well as struggle with forgetfulness and sustaining attention, even in the middle of this talk, as a matter of fact. Hence why I have so many notes. As before, with all that in mind, how can we explore ADHD through the game? What is the game about in this context? The game mechanics are simple. The play options are simple. The challenge is in playing this focused. The game is structured to require absolute focus. And when the attention slips, the player tends to die very quickly, as you're able to see. The thing is that it's focus, not hyper-focus, as we'll talk about in just a minute. But this is our goal of the game, is to be focused, with otherwise simple tools. Our first bit of symbolism here are the skulls themselves. These are racing thoughts, uncontrolled influence. Every single enemy in this game is a variant on a skull. Rushing thoughts and other distractions are naturally from your own head, so that's kind of what you're trying to clear here. You're going to start noticing a trend and a theme here with ADHD, and this game is focus. In this case, the platform is the mind of an ADHD person. Like when meditating, the goal is to try and keep it clear of idle thoughts, hence why we try and clear the enemies within the platform. To do so requires focus. Everything in this game, about this place, about everything in it, is about the clear platform, getting back to it, trying to wipe everything clean. Even the sound itself is a huge influencer here. We have, when you're not firing and the platform is clear, I don't know if you're able to tell, but there's a faint calming music indicating peace of mind. It feels like a place you want to get back to. You like this place. But these things will stop you. When you reach maximum power, a howl is added to your stream of daggers, giving the focused player something to kind of hone in on mentally. Enemies have distinct sounds like whispers of racing thoughts, just like how in the mind of an ADHD person, when they have racing thoughts, it's something that you might even feel chipping away at your focus, something kind of starting to kind of get in there that wants to take your attention away. Even the sound here, though, is one more thing that demands your attention. If you don't, you won't hear enemies sneaking up on you. If you hyper-focus on it, you'll get swarmed because you can't target or move as well. Focus, but not hyper-focus. And finally, there's the score itself. The score is a measure of how long you can remain completely focused on a single objective to the exclusion of all else, to focus and to pay attention. Everything in this game demands your attention. It chips away at it. It demands focus and teases you with hyperfocus. If you slip up, the game is over. Every second is a struggle. Every minute is draining what precious attention you have to give to the task at hand. My best time that you just saw was 225 seconds. It's not even 3 minutes. It's just over 3 minutes, not even 4. That's it. That's all I've got. That's as long as I can pay attention to anything. Even something I love. So, this brings us to our last topic, PTSD, and in this case, with The Last Guardian. So, as before, let's have a quick look at the demo of The Last Guardian so that we're all on the same page. Okay. Sorry about that. It always kind of pulls at my heartstrings a little bit, and rightly so. That last line, "What's wrong? Are your wings broken?" That's what we're going to be exploring here and kind of what it's about. So, what is The Last Guardian? It's a single-player game, came out on PS4. It's a story puzzle game kind of thing. You do puzzles and so forth. You play as the boy in this, and you awaken to find yourself in the belly of a maze through some sort of ancient city and next to this dragon called Trico. You don't have any means of attack. You don't have any means of defense. You can't escape it on your own. And you have a pet dragon. I mean, that's great, right? Or do you? So we'll be exploring that a little bit. Before we go any further, though, let's find out specifically what PTSD is. These are some very quick notes. A full diagnosis of PTSD is complicated and should only be done by a licensed professional. So the DSM-5 says that it's a person who is exposed to death, threatened death, actual or threatened serious injury, or actual or threatened sexual violence. The traumatic event is persistently re-experienced. Avoidance of trauma-related stimuli after said trauma, negative thoughts or feelings that began or worsened after the trauma, trauma-related arousal or reactivity that began or worsened after said trauma. The symptoms last more than 1 month. The symptoms create distress or functional impairment, and symptoms are not due to medication, substance use, or other illness. So the sort of exposure they're talking about is direct, witnessed, or indirect via close friends or family, or even employment. By re-experience, they mean intrusive thoughts, nightmares, and flashbacks. Avoidance of trauma-related stimuli refers to the feelings and reminders of the event, whatever it happened to be. Negative thoughts can be very broad, including the inability to recall specific details. Maybe you can only call back key features, overly negative thoughts, feeling isolated, so on and so forth. And the reactivity or worsening can mean, among other things, irritability, risky behavior, hypervigilance, difficulty concentrating, and sleeping. There are several methods of treatment for PTSD, but in particular, we're going to be concerned with exposure. This is the game. It doesn't really touch on the other ones, but it hits exposure really hard, and this is also one of the more effective methods of dealing with PTSD. This is a really complicated topic, though, the full scope of which is way beyond this presentation, so if you're interested, I urge you to check out the VA's site detailing therapies, and also I do need to note that while these resources are from the VA, PTSD can affect anyone. Anyone at all, not just soldiers, but anybody. So, with all that in mind, what is this game actually about? In this case, the game is actually about being a caregiver to a person with PTSD. In this case, the dragon. You're going to have to console him when he's enraged, and there are many enemies in the game here that will try to attack you and your dragon, while Trico is much more powerful, and he's more than capable of dealing with them. He'll be completely and totally enraged, like way beyond. He does not look like he does in the trailer. He is a beast. A terrifying one. It looks like he's stuck in a flashback to an earlier time. His eyes change to a different color, he sounds and acts differently, and will keep pounding lifeless bodies to dust. Before he can proceed, you'll need to leap onto him, climb into a spot in between his wings, and you'll have to pet him and reassure him. You'll have to tell him that it's okay. And when that happens, you'll see eventually he'll start to calm down. The light will change color in his eyes, and he'll turn around, and he's become the gentle giant once more. You're going to have to guide him when he's unsure where to go next. You see, there's no button to, drag him anywhere. You can call to him, but he has to decide to move forward. You don't direct this narrative. It's his narrative. You're helping. That's your only goal here. You can't do it for him. You have to care for him when he's had too much pain. There are these metal monstrosities, these statues that will hurl spears at you, and whenever some get stuck in him, earlier on in the game, he can only take one, maybe, and he recoils in fear, and you have to actually climb onto him, pull the things out, and let him know that it's okay before he's able to proceed. But a fascinating thing happens, which is that through your help, as you go on through the game, he's able to take significantly more and more damage as it's going on, until eventually not even those can stop him. You also have to help him grapple with the source of his trauma. You're surrounded by the thing that has given him his trauma. He's not able to just do it on his own. Left to his own devices, he's down stuck in the cave just like you are. But with your help, with you being able to help move things out of the way, being able to direct him, being able to help guide him, solve puzzles and everything else, you're going to help him in this way. The last bit is that your primary job is you're going to lead him out of darkness. And ultimately, if you want to help care for a person with PTSD, this is literally the idea, is to help lead them. In this game, you actually literally ascend out of darkness. But this getting back to being able to help him reclaim himself to become a normal person is the idea. So, what do we have for symbolism? Well, first, obviously, we have Trico's face. The eyes will give you an indication of where he is mentally. As you can see here, they're kind of more placid, that kind of thing. There's streaks down his face right below the eye sockets that, along with the horns, indicate a horrible trauma that you're going to help him overcome. Just looking at this face, it looks like someone who is obviously in need of some assistance of some kind. As he gets stronger, the horns are going to come back and his eyes will glow softly. As you help guide him out of darkness, he gets stronger. By your actions, his horns regrow, he becomes more luminous, and the light in his eyes returns. We also have these evil eye things. I mentioned that you're going to have to help guide him and grapple with his trauma. These things are literal symbols of trauma, and until they're dealt with, they literally prevent all forward progress. But through exposure, eventually Trico is able to overcome them, especially near the end, where they cannot stop him. They can't hurt him anymore. When you come across these things, he gets very angry. His eyes change. He flat out refuses to move past them. He'll growl at them. It's like literally you cannot make him move past them. You have to help him with it. With gradually increasing that exposure, he gets from being able to see one and stop everything to being able to see a bunch of them near him and he can keep moving. Eventually, you help him through that exposure put away those symbols of trauma, that they can't claim him anymore. We can even see the armor on Trico. It's like with the armor on him, he's terrifying. He's a beast, just like his former comrades are. However, once the armor's gone, you can see that he's actually just a hurt, gentle giant. His healing can only begin when the armor is gone, which is why the literally first thing that you do in the game is help him remove the armor. Without it, he can't progress. We also have this other creature called the Tricopath. You can see it here in the foreground. We can see Trico there in the back. It's symbolizing his former self. At first, he's unwilling to attack it. He knows it's like him. You see, honestly, it's only when this version of his old self tries to directly kill you that he's willing to even attack it, willing to even engage, that he doesn't want to deal with that former life because it involves acceptance. You know, that's where we know that something terrible happened, or we did something terrible, or whatever it was, and we have to accept that and incorporate it and say, okay, we can move past this. We also have this item, the Mirror Shield. It's actually a literal key in this case, but it's more a symbolic key of acceptance of trauma. You see, early on in the game, you find this thing, and it helps you use his powers. You can help focus it to be able to tear down some walls and so forth, but he looks really angry and upset whenever you use it, and it's because it's too early. Again, you can't drag people to being better. You have to guide them and help them, but they have to do it on their own. So he takes it away from you. Until the last third of the game, when he's healed enough, he gives it back to you, and now you're able to use it with him. He's no longer super angry and upset. He's no longer afraid. Together, you can harness this power that he has. When it comes up later, this can't hurt him anymore either. You'll keep noticing this as a theme. With acceptance, he gains appreciation for his skills. They don't actually have to be associated with the trauma. It can be something just that he can do, just in the way that many of us have special skills, special powers that we can do. They don't have to be associated with trauma. It's okay. It's part of you. Even the sound in this game is used to drive home this allegory. And that's how this thing is unbelievably committed to its allegory. In this case, almost all of the music is driven by Trico's actions. There is a single small exception, and that's whenever you're being chased by the stone golems, and even then it's very muted, and you could actually make an argument that it's because Trico can see you and is distressed that he can't help. All the swells, all the drops, everything that happens sound-wise in this game is all as a result of Trico's actions. He's big. He's the center of focus. The camera is about him. He has literal keybinds dedicated just to interacting with him. Everything in this game, even the sound, is telling you this is his story. It's not yours. It's important. We're going to help him. The only notable sound from the boy is whenever you call to him to guide him. That is literally it. And it's a small, tiny sound off to the side you kind of hope that he's paying attention to. So this is the kind of thing I'm talking about here, is that the title itself is The Last Guardian. It's about you, right? It's about the boy. The ending tells us that there are more dragons, but there are no more like you. There's no more children. There's no more people like you that can help. You had to be his guardian. You had to be that light. He can't go home otherwise. When we experience awful, traumatic events, we often need help from those people we trust. They see us at our most vulnerable, and they protect us. They guide us out of darkness. They're our guardians. And with this game, you can learn how to be one too. So what does it all mean? Mental health and mental disorders are huge topics that fundamentally affect who we are. Everyone here, no matter how powerful their skills, no matter what tools they built, is a person. Behind everything that we do, everything that we build, our open office plans even, are people. And we need people. We need to interact with people, and we need to be better people. If you suffer from a disorder, you are not alone. If you know someone with a disorder, you need to support them and let them know that you support them, that it's okay. You know, it's all right. Our intelligence and skill has made us very strong, but empathy for our compatriots is the only thing that really it all needs to be in service to, because if we can't have any empathy, this is all for nothing. None of this matters. I strongly recommend checking out Spec Ops: The Line if you're interested in this stuff. I can't tell you a whole lot about it other than the fact that this is my favorite version, hands down, of Heart of Darkness. It is a terrifying experience. It is a legendary in the gaming industry experience. You got to see this thing. And on top of that, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice. If you're interested in this stuff, it does a better job of explaining anything than I think I'll ever be able to. It is the most clear, concise, straightforward, and powerful experience of psychosis that I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like it, ever, period. It even comes with a little documentary with it. You got to check it out. So, thank you everyone for your time. I've got an appendix here at the end of the slide deck I'm going to put up, but I've got some time for questions. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Any questions? Yes. I might. Is that okay? All right. Yes, I will go out with you. Oh, okay. Is that all right? I think about this stuff and spend a lot of time with stories all the time. Yeah. What's up? Of course. It's like I mean it when I say I'm not a psychotherapist. It's like I know that I can sound like I know what I'm talking about, but I am not a licensed psychotherapist. Those people are amazing, and they dedicate their lives to making the rest of us better. That's kind of awesome. Yeah, I wish everybody would put appendices up. Yes. 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 Especially with my particular condition, I will think about, I need things that help me key in, that help me I can never really, just like in Devil Daggers, I can't clear the platform. I can only do it for a little while. I can pay attention to one thing, but that's about it. So I either need reliable methods of distraction that are like, say, small games, maybe turn-based actually work out amazingly because I can just pop in, do 1 or 2 turns, and save and quit, and it's like, okay, I did the thing. That anxiety is gone. I can go back to what I was doing. Or if I can think about it, and especially in the case of stories, they affect me for a very, very, very long time. I finished The Last Guardian, I think it was like last January or something, and it still affects me to this day. I still think about what it looked like, what it felt like. No. It's that one of the marvelous things about games is that, especially modern games, honestly, is that games are designed to be beaten. You know, even if it's a versus game, it's designed to be beaten. And most games are actually either single-player or cooperative. They're designed to be beaten together, or even with online help, or through all sorts of things. You can actually probably make an argument that even InfoSec, maybe one of the things like I know that I find frustrating is that if it feels like something can't be beaten, it's frustrating. And it's like, yeah, but it's supposed to be, right? We know it's supposed to be a solvable problem. It can be frustrating, but it doesn't make me feel worse. It's more like I may need to take a break sometimes if I'm not doing very good, but I can go out, I can research, I can take a quick break, I can get back, and I can get through this thing. I can be better. I can make my life better. And I think that's an important lesson for everybody. Once in a while I'll jump between a couple, but I've never just totally walked away except for Dark Souls, but that's only because I thought it was terrible. I know. Like hashtag rage. We're like gonna blow up the Twitter sphere. He hates Dark Souls. No, but I like Bloodborne. I thought that was good. Yeah, I thought it was good. Yes, sir. On Offhand, I haven't found anything. Like, there are a few that I can think of that would be interesting to examine, but I haven't found anything yet that does just what it's like or how to help. Honestly, the very closest that's really, really, really good is, here, I'll put it up here real quick, is really Hellblade. It's not about her being bipolar, honestly, but in watching the video of how it's done, you can see how this is the way to be able to make something about a disorder. It's like, honestly, it is. Yes, I know you have a question. Hmm. One of the things why I look at games and why I think about games is that games have been a huge part of my life, but as even my shirt is about, I believe very strongly in stories. Stories, see, the most, I know this is off a little bit, but stories are the most human thing that you can do. There is no more human an endeavor than you can possibly undertake than tell a story. We see ourselves in stories. There's only 12, 13, there's 12 or 13 types of story, and that's it. And yet, they're unending. You can always hear a new story. You can always hear someone's life that amazes you with things you never thought of before. And yet we've been living. How many people have like walked the surface of the earth? It's like it's billions and billions and billions of people, right? It's like it's massive. That's how many stories we made out of just over 10, and we're still making them. That's kind of awesome. To me, games are a fourth medium. We have visual, we have auditory, we have written, and now we have interactive. It doesn't need to just be a video game. It can be a real life game. It can be a sport. It can be anything. Even sports, like one of the favorite things that everyone tells me about physical sports is that they tell me of the drama between where teams were supposed to go, what players beat what players, the backstory of it. They care about those stories. The one thing that I like about games more than anything else that really separates them is that they are an interactive story. You drive this thing. It doesn't drive itself. If nobody plays it, it doesn't really exist. If you don't really read a book, the book is still out there. Tons of people can play it. Tons of people can read it. Tons of people can experience a movie. It moves at its own pace, whatever it is, faster or slower. You can't really do much about it. But games are a little different. Games are something you drive, you can be a part of. You can tell your own story. Really great games give you lots of variety in story. My favorite game of all time is Doom. It is my hands down favorite game. I play this thing to this day. I've been playing it for over 25 years. Like, I love this game. I still build things in this game. And I can tell you stories about Doom. I can tell you stories about how it made me feel, about my life going up to this thing, about how it helped me grapple with things like my ADHD. knowing that actually part of the reason I do better in this is because of short bursts of massive target priority. I can't do long form things. That was weird to me. I didn't understand, but I do now. An interactive game helped me understand that. I didn't understand how to hack things, but I knew Doom, and I knew that I wanted to pull apart WAD files, and I wanted to make levels, and I wanted to make sounds. I wanted to record those on my weird little 386, and I wanted to see if I could put those in for every time you shot a weapon, it set a strange sound. I figured out how to work with systems because of Doom. That helped me in a way that I love books, and I love movies, and I love music. I love plays and all of those things, but they don't need me to work. But games need you to work. They're built for you. They're only for you. That's kind of awesome. So, anyway, that's why I get really fired up about games and stories and stuff. That's all right. I think that's all the time I got. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.